Astigmatism is something that a lot of shooters struggle with. In fact, 1 in 3 people have some form of this problem to some degree. Today, we're going to look at an optic that helps to mitigate the effects of astigmatism, the Swampfox Blade Prism optic. So what happens when you have astigmatism? For those of us in the shooting world, this most readily presents itself with red dot optics. When looking through a red dot optic, shooters with astigmatism won't see a clean or crisp red dot with defined edges. Instead, we see a starburst, or a blurred dot, or in some cases even a duplicated phantom dot. This obviously is not ideal for the sake of any sort of accuracy. Prism sights negate this by using a different method altogether for delivering the dot or reticle to the eye. Instead of reflecting an LED light off of a piece of glass, a prism sight uses lenses inside the housing to bend and rotate the reticle image. The net result of this is that the image stays clearly and cleanly defined for all eye types. That brings me to today's review, the Swampfox Blade Prism optic. The Blade is a 1x25 optic that uses prisms to display its etched and illuminated CQB-oriented reticle. Swampfox calls that a bullet rise compensation reticle, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. It also features the same shake-awake technology found in the Justice, and it has 10 illumination settings for the reticle, 2 of which are night vision settings. It has a focusing eyepiece for tuning the reticle to your eyes, and 3.8 inches of eye relief. MSRP for the Blade is $240, which already makes it very affordable for what it is, but you can consistently find this for less than that. I got this one for $200 at Brownells. The Blade runs on a CR123 battery that Swampfox includes with the optic. Swampfox quotes an operational life of between 3,000 hours on the low end to 40,000 hours on the high end. Considering that auto-off function and that shake-awake features that the optic has, this should be more than enough time to last a full year for my use case, which is when I typically change my batteries. The illumination setting is controlled by the up and down buttons on the top of the optic, and I find these to be really big and easy to use and very clickable. The Blade has a total available range of 45 MOA of adjustment, and it's adjusted via the turrets on the top and on the right side of the optic. Each click has a 0.5 MOA per click adjustment, and the turrets themselves are covered with the turret caps that are sealed with O-rings, and they're secured to the body with these tethers. All of this is housed in a 6061 T6 aluminum body measuring 4 inches by 2.4 inches by 3.03 inches. This includes an integrated Picatinny rail mount that puts the optic at a co-witness height for an AR-15, which is really nice. The Blade is rated as IPX7 waterproof, which means that it'll survive in 1 meter of water submersion for 30 minutes. Swampfox also claims that the Blade is fog and shockproof. Swampfox throws in lens flip covers and a honeycomb kill flash in the box, which is nice. Also in the box are the standard Swampfox documentation, lens cleaning cloth, and adjustment tool. The Blade also includes another wrench specifically for these mounting screws. As I mentioned, the Blade's reticle is a bullet rise compensation reticle. According to Swampfox, this reticle has been optimized for home defense and law enforcement use. The compensation that they mention is to compensate for the height over bore for AR pattern rifles. In practical sense, that means that once it's zeroed, the Blade has dedicated holds on the reticle for 5, 10, and 15 yard distances. I'll roll in a picture of that so you can see it a lot clearer. The chevron at the bottom of the reticle is a 5-yard hold, the dot above that is a 10-yard hold, and the base of the arrow is a 15-yard hold. It should be noted again that this is for AR pattern firearms. Swampfox says that the holds will not be as valid for other weapon systems. I've had the Blade mounted to my 10.5-inch AR pistol for a few months now, and I have a few opinions on it. First and foremost, it has held zero for about 700 rounds with no issues, and it's always powered on as advertised when I go to pick up the weapon. I also think that the Prism optic is a godsend for people with astigmatism. The reticle on the Blade is always clear and bright, and because it's etched into the glass, it's there even with the illumination turned completely off. The illumination itself is clean, it's evenly dispersed throughout the reticle, and it gets plenty bright for daytime use. The dedicated holds are fantastic for close shots because they let me zero the weapon at a still usable 50/200 yard, while still giving me an actual point on the reticle to put on a target at closer ranges. I also like that the battery compartment is here in the middle of the body instead of hanging off on the side, which makes the optic feel less bulky. I like the integrated co-witness mount for AR and pattern weapons because it's integrated into the body and rock solid. And I also like that they take the time to include accessories like caps and a kill flash in the box, so you don't have anything that you need to go buy. You open up the box, you mount it up, and you're ready to go. So now for some things that maybe aren't so great. I will say right off the bat that most of these are very small things. So that being said, the first nit that I'm going to pick is that I think that the flip caps that they include in the box aren't really very good. Or at least the one for the eyepiece side is not very good. Sometimes if I don't flip it closed a certain way, the entire cap will just come right off the optic. And, obviously that's not really what you want to be seeing. You need to put your finger here and close it by leveraging your thumb, and, that's a better way to close it. Similarly, if you don't open it the right way, it will also just pop off sometimes. Again, I love that they include these in the box, but they need to fit more snugly to be functional. The second thing is the turret adjustment and the lack of a tactile click for each adjustment. The turrets do make an audible sound when they adjust, but it's pretty quiet, and I couldn't hear it when I was adjusting it on the range with other people shooting. You combine that with the fact that I can't feel a click either when I adjust the turrets, and it had me second guessing my adjustments and added some extra time to zeroing the optic. Lastly, the eye box is notably smaller than a red dot when you're off axis from the optic a bit. And the smallest nits to pick, I noticed that some of the fins on the included keel flash were just a little bit bent right out of the box. So, what do I think overall? I think it's pretty darn good. The feature set and the performance are hard to match at this price point. The only thing that currently comes close is the Vortex Spitfire AR, and that lacks the bullet rise compensation reticle and auto-on features that the Blade has. There are definitely a few small, annoying things about it, but they're not things that have stopped me from running and enjoying the optic. When I run it on the AR pistol, I have the flip caps removed and the optic completely zeroed at the recommended 50/200 yard distance, and not having to deal with the caps or the turrets to zero the thing have eliminated most of my complaints about the Blade. That and the fact that I don't have to deal with the typical problems associated with astigmatism and a red dot optic mean that I think that this has found a permanent home on my 10.5-inch pistol and has gone a good bit to give me a good impression of Swampfox as a brand. So that's the practical tactical review of the Swampfox Blade and how it helped solve, at least partially, my struggles as a shooter with astigmatism. If you're interested in the Blade, check the description for a link to the Blade at Brownells. There'll also be a link in the description to the blog, which has articles on other practical stuff that I think you're going to like. That's all I have for you this time, but make sure to come back next week for an intro to yet another new series. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring that bell on your way out. Until then, stay safe.